On the day Wall Street suffers the worst crash in its history, a 19-year-old wiring trades from a Harvard dorm room does not lose a single cent. He makes money. And that one morning is the seed of a $60 billion empire. Before the story dives in, if you want to keep watching the deep dives into the titans who quietly run the financial world, subscribe to this channel so the next one finds you. It is a fall morning in 1987. On the roof of a Harvard dorm, bolted against the cold, a satellite dish and a fax machine are pulling live market prices out of the sky and into a sleeping student's room. Everyone else on the hall is asleep. He is not. His name is Ken Griffin, and he is watching numbers scroll across a screen that nobody his age is supposed to have. Then the world breaks. It is October 19th, 1987, Black Monday. In a single day, markets collapse across the entire planet, wiping out nearly a quarter of their value before lunch. On the trading floors, grown men are screaming into phones, watching fortunes evaporate in real time. Wall Street is on fire. And in a cramped dorm room, a teenager sits perfectly still. How does a teenager make money on the worst day in market history? He does the one thing no one around him can do. He sees the gap. Here is what he sees. There is a strange little instrument called a convertible bond. Think of it as a loan to a company that can flip into that company's stock later on. Two things, tied together. And on this insane morning, the price of the bond and the price of the stock have come unglued from each other. One is worth more than the math says it should be, the other, less. A crack in the wall that almost no one else is even looking for. So he moves. He buys the bond. At the same time, he bets against the stock. He sells it short, meaning he profits when it falls. Now watch what he has done. If the market drops, he wins on one side. If it climbs, he wins on the other. He has locked in the gap between the two prices, and it pays him no matter which way the world moves. On the day Wall Street burns to the ground, the kid in the dorm room is quietly getting richer. This is not luck. This is a mind that sees risk one heartbeat before everyone else. He is 19 years old, a math prodigy out of Boca Raton, Florida. While his classmates are cramming for exams, he is running trades between lectures, wiring orders from a two-bedroom dorm as if it were a Wall Street desk. He got permission to bolt that dish onto the roof. He read the fine print no one else read. He was, in every way that matters, already different. A boy who looks at a market and sees an engine, not a casino. Word of the kid travels. A Chicago investor named Frank Meyer, a man who has spent his life hunting for talent, hears about the college student beating the professionals and does something almost no one does. He hands a 20-something student $1 million of real capital to run. It is a bet on a boy. And Griffin nearly doubles it. So what is he actually seeing that the professionals miss? Here is the honest half of the answer. It isn't a lucky streak. It's a pattern, a hidden structure underneath the money that most people never even notice is there. And that structure is not unique to him. The same 6 patterns sit beneath nearly every great fortune ever built, and they have been pulled apart and laid out plainly in a book called The Empire Code. No vague motivation, no fluff, just the actual blueprint for how leverage, positioning, and capital really compound at the top, so you can spot the exact same code at work in any success story you admire. If that is the layer you want to understand, scan the code on screen or follow the link in the description. Because Griffin is about to build a machine out of exactly that code. In 1990, at 22 years old, he takes what he has proven and opens his own fund. about $4.5 million. And a name chosen cold and deliberate, a name that tells you everything about how this man sees the world. He calls it Citadel, a fortress. A fortress is only ever built for one reason, because someone knows a siege is coming. The question is which siege will come for it first. Because Griffin does not gamble on hunches. He never has. What he intends to build is not a bet, but a machine. One that strips risk into pieces, hedges every piece, and grinds out profit whether stocks rise or whether they fall. A casino that quietly owns the odds instead of playing them. He names his fund Citadel, a fortress built to survive a siege. But he does not yet know the shape of the thing coming for it. He only knows that when it comes, it will try to burn the fortress to the ground. And for 18 years, it will wear the mask of triumph before it strikes. The siege does not announce itself. It arrives dressed as victory, wearing the mask of triumph, and for 18 years, no one inside Citadel can tell the difference. Because before a fortress can be tested, it first has to become something worth burning down. Through the 90s and into the 2000s, Citadel swells past $20 billion. And on those trading floors, Ken Griffin builds something Wall Street has never seen before. He does not hire traders. He hires physicists and mathematicians. People who spent their lives modeling the behavior of subatomic particles, now sitting at long banks of screens, modeling the behavior of money instead. He fills entire floors with them. Because to Griffin, the market is not a smoke-filled room where you feel the cards in your hand. It is an engineering problem, a machine with inputs and outputs. And if you are smart enough, you can solve it. So how does the machine actually make money? Here is the whole secret. Griffin takes a risk, a bond, a stock, a whole basket of trades, and he strips it down into its raw parts, the way a mechanic strips an engine down to bolts. Each part carries its own small danger, and he cancels out each one separately, so no single move can hurt him. Think of a casino. The gambler at the table is sweating, praying the wheel lands on his number. Griffin is not the gambler. Griffin owns the room. He does not care where the ball drops because the odds are built into the walls. So is this gambling? No. A gambler prays the dice fall his way. Griffin builds the table, sets the odds, and takes his cut either way. Stocks rise, he wins. Stocks fall, he wins. The machine just grinds, day after day, quietly turning risk into profit while everyone else is guessing. And he can do it because he still sees the same thing he saw at 19, on that roof, with the dish pulling prices from the sky. He sees the danger one heartbeat before the rest of the market feels it. Citadel moves into everything. Stocks, bonds, currencies, entire corners of finance most people have never heard of. The money comes in like a tide that never goes out. And Griffin starts to spend it. He buys the most expensive homes on the planet. He buys the most expensive paintings ever sold, hanging fortunes on his walls that cost more than most companies are worth. From the outside, the fortress gleams. Impregnable. He looks untouchable. And in this business, the moment a man looks untouchable is the exact moment the market decides to prove him wrong. It is September 2008. On a Monday morning, one of the oldest names on Wall Street simply stops existing. Lehman Brothers, a bank that stood for more than 150 years, files for bankruptcy and collapses into dust. And when it falls, it does not fall alone. Credit freezes overnight. Banks stop lending to each other because no one knows who is already dead and just hasn't hit the floor yet. The whole system seizes up all at once. The siege has finally arrived at the gate, and it goes straight for Citadel. The markets Griffin built his machine on stop behaving like a machine. The prices that were supposed to move in careful, hedged pairs come unglued and lurch in every direction at once. The bonds he owns and the stocks he bet against start falling together when they were never supposed to. His hedges, the walls of the fortress, buckle. In a single year, Citadel's flagship funds crater more than 50%. Read that again, slowly. Half of everything, gone. Billions of dollars that took Griffin 18 years to build evaporate in a matter of months. On paper, the fortress is burning from the inside, and the man who built it can only watch the numbers bleed red on every screen. And Wall Street can smell it. The whispers start almost immediately, and they spread like fire through dry grass. Griffin is finished. Citadel is the next Lehman. The fund is a corpse that just hasn't been buried yet. Rival traders start circling, betting against him, trying to push the wounded giant over the edge so they can feed on what's left. And the regulators, who spent years admiring the machine, now start asking quiet, dangerous questions about whether it is about to take a piece of the whole market down with it. Everyone is waiting for the same thing. They are waiting for Ken Griffin to break. His investors panic. They want out. They start demanding their money back, all at once, the way a crowd claws at the doors of a failing bank. And if he lets them, if he sells everything to pay them, he will have to dump billions into a market that is already in free fall at the worst possible prices. It would finish him. It would prove the whispers right with his own hands. So Griffin does the one thing no one expects. He freezes investor withdrawals. He locks the doors of his own fortress from the inside. The people who trusted him, who handed him their fortunes, are now trapped in there with him, unable to get a single dollar out. It is the act of a man with no options left. A desperate move to stop the bleeding. And it looks, to everyone watching, exactly like the last twitch of a dying animal. Across Wall Street, the verdict is already written. Ken Griffin is finished. Citadel is the next to fall, and the smoke is already rising off the wreckage. But behind those locked doors, with billions gone and the wolves howling at the gate, Griffin now has to make a single decision. One choice, in the dark, with everything on the line. And it is the exact opposite of what every single person on Wall Street is betting he will do. He refuses to sell. While every other fund on the street is dumping at any price the market will take, Griffin does the one thing that looks like madness. He holds. He sits inside the fortress with the doors bolted, the screens in front of him bleeding red, billions already gone, and he does not flinch. He absorbs the pain. Position by position, he waits for the panic to burn itself out. The traders who bet against him that year still talk about it. He wasn't the loudest man on the floor, and he'd tell you himself that the numbers looked like a disaster. But there was this thing in him, a flat, cold refusal to lose, that the others simply did not have. When the whole world is running for the exit, he stands in the doorway, and he will not move. Where does a man find the nerve to hold when the world is selling? In the same place, he found it at 19. One heartbeat ahead of everyone in the room. And slowly, the ground stops falling. Within 2 years, the flagship funds claw back everything they lost, and then more. The fortress that Wall Street had already buried is still standing when the smoke clears, its walls intact, its owner richer than before the siege began. The obituary is quietly deleted. The wolves go home hungry. Here is where most men would stop. Rebuild the fund, count the win, retire into the legend of the trader who survived 2008. Griffin does the opposite. He looks at the crash that nearly killed him and draws a colder conclusion. The real fortune is not in betting on the market. It is in owning the machine the market runs on. So he pours resources into Citadel Securities. Not a hedge fund, a market maker. Think of it as the plumbing of the stock market, the pipes nobody ever sees. Every time an ordinary person taps buy or sell, someone on the other side has to fill that order in an instant, hand over the shares, take the cash. Citadel Securities becomes that someone, millions of times a second. And this is the engine that changes everything. Today, Griffin's market-making operation handles a staggering share of every single stock trade placed in America. When you open a free trading app like Robinhood and buy a piece of a company, the order very often does not go to some giant exchange floor full of shouting men. It goes, silently, to his machine. Citadel Securities earns a fraction of a cent on each one. A fraction of a cent sounds like nothing. Multiply it by billions of trades every single day, and it becomes one of the most profitable systems in the history of money. A toll booth quietly bolted to the entire American market. For years it runs in the dark, invisible. And then, in 2021, the machine is dragged into the light. GameStop, a dying video game store in a shopping mall, a mob of small investors trading messages on the internet, and a surge so violent it sends the stock to the moon in a matter of days. Fortunes are made and vaporized in hours. The trading apps freeze, and millions of furious people demand to know why. And when the country goes looking for who really sits at the center of the storm, the trail leads to one firm: Citadel Securities, the hidden engine filling those frantic orders on the other side. Ken Griffin is hauled before Congress. The boy who once wired trades from a dorm room is now seated at a witness table, under oath, forced to explain to the United States government how so much of the market came to run through his machines. When you tap buy on a trading app and the order fills in an instant, ask who is really on the other side. More often than you know, it is his machine. That hearing is the proof of everything. The satellite dish on the roof of a Harvard dorm has become a system so vast that lawmakers cannot ignore it. And as the cameras roll, Citadel's fortune crosses $60 billion. Griffin lifts his throne out of Chicago and sets it down in Miami, on the water, buying the most expensive homes and the most expensive paintings on earth, sitting behind a hidden engine of American finance that almost no one outside this story understands. Look back at the whole climb now. The 19-year-old on the roof, pulling live prices out of the sky while the campus sleeps. The convertible bond trade that made money on the day Wall Street burned. The fund named for a fortress, built to survive a siege. The crash that should have ended him, and the quiet decision, behind locked doors, to hold instead of run. For more than 30 years, the essence of the man has never really changed. Conservative when others are reckless. Calm when others panic. Building the walls higher every single time the market tries to break through them. The market has come for him again and again, in '87, in 2008, in the frenzy of 2021. Each time it fails. Each time he is still there when the smoke finally clears, standing on the ruins of everyone who bet against him. That is the strange, cold lesson underneath the whole empire. The real power on Wall Street does not belong to the man who makes the boldest bet. It belongs to the man who can hold his nerve when everyone else has lost theirs, and who, one heartbeat before the rest of the room, already knows how the story ends. The boy with the dish on the roof grew up to own the plumbing of the market itself, And every day, without knowing his name, tens of millions of people place their trades directly into his hands. The last one standing. The trader who saw risk one heartbeat before everyone else. Ken Griffin. Phineas.